The Comox Strathcona Waste Management Service area includes the Coast Salish, the Kawakawak, and the Nutchella territories, if I said that correctly. Call the meeting to order. And recommendation that the agenda be approved as presented. Moved. And sorry, who second? Second, Mr. Well, thank you. In camera, none. Adoption of minutes. That the Comox Waste Management Board minutes dated March 7th, 2024 be adopted. We got Mr. Grant and we have Director Mowini. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Business arising from minutes. None. This microphone, I feel like I should be doing karaoke or something. Any requests? Bohemian Rhapsody. That's one of my favorites. You can see the generational gap there. Petition and delegations, done. Reports. Community education, communications, and outreach with Comox Strathcona Waste Management Service. Report dated May 9th, 2024 regarding the exploration and expansion, communication, and community. Thank you very much. Please jump in there at any time. Discussion. All in favor? We have a staff presentation. I apologize.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Good morning, everyone. We have a presentation. Well, we have several reports to provide today, presentations for some and just a synopsis for others. But the first one here is over to Sari Willie, our Manager of Solid Waste Planning and Policy Development, and she'll take us through this report. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Through this, what are we calling you, Mark? Through the CAO to the chair. Yeah. Thank you very much for having us. We're going to speak today on the technical memo that was presented to the Regional Solid Waste Advisory Committee, the RSPAC. And that's on community education, communication, and outreach. This presentation was graciously prepared by the consultant, Let's Talk Trash, who did the research on this subject and presented to the RSPAC and couldn't be here today, unfortunately. The strategy description really it does come back to the goals and guiding principles that we went through in step 2 with the solid waste management plan that we consulted with the community on. So the main goal, I think, that really speaks to this is to have informed residents, businesses, and community partners empowered to participate effectively and consistently in proper waste management practices. And so for that to occur, of course, we need to get out there and interact with these people. And unfortunately, that costs money. So the key strategy is to get from 551 kilograms down to 350 kilograms. And we need to make sure that folks know how to do that and can participate effectively. We have, of course, implemented a number of strategies in the last 10 years since our last solid waste management plan. It's a multifaceted effort that you need to approach this with. So we have certainly taken the efforts to update our website and provide a more robust learning experience there for residents and for users of our facilities. We've recently launched an app to, again, more easily answer the question of what goes where. We've also created a number of brochures and certainly have taken a multifaceted approach to education and outreach efforts. You've heard from our communicators. We have 3 staff as well, or 3 contracts and 2 staff as well that are out in the community and in schools, continuing to get that message out. So as I mentioned, we have Tina and Lindsay. They're in all of the school districts, including our remote school district that teaches distance education, and the French language one we do offer presentations to. We're working on offering those presentations in French themselves, but for now they have received those in English. And Tina's getting out to a number of students every year, over 30 presentations, lots of tours at the landfill as well. In terms of topics that she brings forward, waste diversion initiatives, prevention of illegal dumping, the curbside collection programs, there's lots to discuss there with our residents and the community. We've also got a social media presence that we're working on building. So we have an established Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram pages. Our videos that we create are quite playful and have received a good recognition from the community, both in the waste sector and the general population. And I mentioned the Recollect app and the webpage as well. Education was definitely a theme throughout step 1 and step 2. And we are hearing that from every part of our service. So we've come forward with a few different strategies to support improved education, communication, and engagement opportunities. So strategy 2A is to maintain education and engagement levels as is. So we do think we're doing a good job now, and dedicating a reasonable number of resources, about $110,000 a year. And we're able to get to, as I say, to all the school districts and out into each of the communities. And we do have an additional staff member that we're recruiting for currently, that was approved through the budget. That's a communications specialist, and that person will support us and reduce our reliance on contracted services for those, as well as add capacity internally. It does limit our creation of new initiatives or programs, and some of those will fall out through the solid waste management plan process. So that's something to consider. Strategy 2B is to increase education outreach and communications capacity. And we're looking to add more ability to interact with our IC&I sector, our multifamily sector, certainly the construction demolition. We're starting some smaller pilot phases right now, where Lindsay's getting out to meet with a few multifamilies and learn about the level of effort it will take to engage with those communities, with those buildings one-on-one. And as well, she's working with a couple of contractors to try and establish some on-site sorting to gain learnings from there and provide those learnings back to the sector. So certainly, at the pilot phase, that's manageable within our current budget constraints. But should we expand initiatives like that, that would take additional capacity. So that additional capacity was budgeted at around $40,000 a year. And of course, all of these are relative to our overall waste generation of around 65,000 tons a year. So in terms of diversion expectations for each of these strategies, they are considered low relative to some of the larger things that you may see coming forward in future tech memos. The third strategy is to invest in portable waste diversion infrastructure. So large events where there's significant numbers of the community. A great example would be the air show that's coming up this weekend, Rip Fest, any of those types of events. They each individually have to have infrastructure to support diversion, and being able to share that amongst events would be a benefit for the community and also for the residents who would see consistent containers and signage at each event if they're attending different events in the community. The other piece of this is including a water distribution truck. So that would be to allow people to safely refill water bottles at a site like this. And we think that one of the benefits of this strategy is that it could be deployed in the event of an emergency to, if people are sheltering in place, that we could provide both waste receptacles and a water truck to support those people. So wouldn't be sitting around. These are some examples. This is our current signage. It's bit difficult in that it's attached to wood. The containers don't necessarily have lids. So we're just looking to improve some of those. And there's some other examples here of things that are a bit more mobile and easier to transport. The cost for that is estimated about $40,000 plus $1,000 to $1,500 per event in terms of financial impact for hiring a contracted waste event coordinator to support the volunteers that are usually associated and give them the training to make sure the materials are sorted correctly. And the last strategy in this particular topic is to invest in regional district facility diversion. So the regional district, local government, synonymous there. So to outfit SRD and CVRD owned and operated facilities with diversion stations, again, to sort of walk the talk. We recognize that providing the bins is only one part of the financial commitment, and so it would require the contracted pickup to change, and that would be borne by the local government. So certainly a bit of a partnership would be required. And again, that's looking at public facing consistency and hoping that people can learn from repetition to not have to make a decision. So a few examples here of different public realm sorting stations that we've all come across in different facilities, airports and malls and that sort of thing. So just to summarize the 4 actions, each of them do have a low to medium diversion potential. Operations and staffing impacts are considered low to medium for the last 2. And the financial impacts, again, low to medium. And so we provided consistent structure through these memos so that it will make it easier for you at the end of this process to contrast and compare each of these strategies as we move forward. So just to summarize, we do think it's necessary to educate those members of the public regarding their role in waste management. It's a lot harder to convince people to divert than it is to flush a toilet. And we do need their participation in this process at this time, until technology or producers change their minds and make it easier for everyone. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Anyone have any questions? Director Arbor, you have a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, question/comment. Thank you, Sarah, for this and the rest of the team. I want to hone in on the community events, and I was glad to see this report. Just yesterday, I was at the track meet, and there was probably like 500 people. And I did think about our service because there was the lonely garbage can in the middle and overflowing with all kinds of recyclables. And I'm just like, oh, interesting, that we're not here. So I'm just wondering if this comes back to the board, or in what manner it will come back to the board, because what I would like to see is, the identification of the potential number of community events that we could service, and as well the kind of, I agree with you around the permanent infrastructure, like at that sport field is probably a good place to have at least some dedicated space or something like that, because there's often events at Tyson Farmers Market. It's a busy area. So, but for the board purpose, including Campbell River, the Comox Valley, and other places, having a sense of what the scale would be, because that's 1,000 or 1,500 per event. It would be good for the board to consider, say that first of all, how many events do we currently serve, and what is the potential, right? So if we're currently serving 40 events and we say we'd like to go to 200, what does that look like from a financial perspective and from a diversion perspective as well, diversion outcome? Because I think we want to see the good communication and the goodwill in the community, but I'd also want to understand, if it makes an impactful difference in terms of that diversion. So I don't know if you can feedback on how it will come back to the board, or when. That'd be great.
Yes, thank you for those comments. So the process that we're undertaking now is to compile these memos on different aspects and strategies to achieve our goals. And we're bringing them forward is smaller bites for the board because we recognize there's a lot of information coming forward. So the intent is to compile all of these strategies from each of the different topics into a unified report. We're going to have a robust discussion at the roundtable that the board will be having in October. And so there'll be a lot of opportunity for comparing and contrasting at that point. And then from that long list, moving forward with a short list that we would bring to the public next year. And that will include, as you see here, that sort of diversion potential, the cost implications and operations and resources too. So I've noted your comments there and we can, this is an opportunity to amend, and revise and improve on these memos from feedback from the board. So certainly that's taken.
Director McCollum.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thanks for the report. Yeah, picking up on what Director Arbor was speaking to, just these big community events, and I'm supportive of us having some type of equipment that could be deployed at these types of events to normalize that this is when we have large gatherings in the community, that everything doesn't just go in the garbage. But it made me wonder, and this obviously goes beyond the scope of this board, but can we require that type of action when groups are booking like CVRD facilities, like the track field? I'm thinking back to participating or having my kids participate in a triathlon years ago, and they had like an entire area with dedicated volunteers where they were ensuring, like, just doing a really great job of waste diversion. And the Cumberland Wild kind of stands out as an event that I've attended where they're just very, very, very proactive on ensuring that the very minimum is ending up in the garbage bins. And I wonder, and if we have further tools beyond just providing these, and whether or not it really should be on the service to provide staffing, or whether or not that's something that we can require of events over a certain number of people. Obviously that would need to go, I would assume, to the CVRD board, but maybe there's an opportunity there to kind of require that in some way beyond just encouragement. And then I have another comment. Is it okay if I have two?
Sure, go ahead.
I know there's another light on. Yeah, I would also say that I think that schools are still one of the biggest opportunities for institutional waste diversion, and just instilling lifetime habits and really normalizing everywhere for kids. I mean, that it just turns into a lifetime of thinking about waste in a different way than maybe older generations. So I think the sooner that we can have multiple streams of receptacles in education institutions across all the school districts would be fantastic. And so I'm wondering, but I know that it's been discussed at previous meetings, and whether or not we've had any progress on that. We've still continued to get emails from teachers and parents in the community about when organics is going to be in schools, and it seems related to what we're looking at today.
Yes, thanks. Just to speak to your first comment, I think that's an area we can explore with permits, either from local governments or from regional districts being issued for use of facilities. Certainly there's some of these events that are held on private land or private facilities that it would be more difficult to overlap with, but I think some of them could be incented in other ways. On the schools, we are continuing to work on establishing kind of a normal with the operation of the organics facility. So we're just past our 1 year mark of operations. So I think we're definitely looking forward to expanding the acceptance of materials, especially in those places where there is more control, such as a school or back of house or a restaurant, that sort of place. So at this point, there's no timeline for expansion into the schools, but it certainly will require a level of enthusiasm and participation from the school district board as well. So that's certainly something that we would need to hear from them too.
Okay, thank you, Director Wells.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate it. I was going to follow up on one of the comments that Director McCollum did, but now I'm going to follow up on two of them with probably a very similar kind of comment. So when we're, to me, it's like the permitting that happens with these events is an excellent opportunity to have those types of things and potentially even a fee associated with it if there's a cost to the regional district or to this service. And so my first question is whether or not it makes sense to get that conversation happening sooner rather than later. Is that something that would happen at the staff level that this discussion is assisting, or would it be more useful to have a motion that says, this board actually send a letter to all the municipal governments to say, this is the path we're going down, so we can have sort of that unified messaging. So whether you're doing something in Tassis or you're doing something in Cumberland or wherever it might be throughout the service area, there's a common sort of process in place that again, it may not be exactly the same because capacity might be different, but just so that conversation starts happening sooner rather than later. And then I'll have a subsequent based on Director McCollum's second question.
Thank you for that comment. Yeah, I think that's something we can consider if directed from the board to move forward with sooner rather than later if requested.
Okay, so I'm hearing that a motion might be in order for Mark.
Yeah, thank you. I feel like a specific motion might be a little bit premature. The program that Sarah just presented on was, allocating funds towards infrastructure that could be deployed at these events to make recycling, easier and better. That infrastructure, I would imagine, would be supported by some guidelines and process for, how to collect the material, where to deliver it to, so that it would be smooth for whoever's hosting the event to collect the material and deliver it to the proper either recycling or disposal facilities. So I feel like we should, this item will come to the October roundtable. The board will determine whether it is a priority that they want to carry on and implement as part of the future solid waste management plan update. And then we will have to buy the equipment, we'll have to develop the program. And maybe in parallel with that, we're reaching out to the municipalities to say, if you're providing permits for events, we have this package that, should be a requirement at the event. So I feel like could be a little bit soon to begin that discussion, but I'll leave it to the board to decide.
Yeah, and maybe in my mind, I'm thinking like that's the end sort of ultimate goal, but in the short term, pretty much any event has to have a security plan and, various plans. So maybe the request sooner rather than later is that they have a waste management plan. So it's really just saying, here's some bullet points, but the onus is really on the event planners for that waste management plan. So again, trying to understand the capacity, especially in smaller communities, that if the onus is put back onto that that actual event organizer, that doesn't necessarily flow back. But as things get developed, there can be more tools and options to help support events. But in the short term, just having that conversation happening. But yeah, that's just kind of what was going through my mind, I think, to a certain degree. All right. And so based on Councillor McCollum's second comment around school districts, and then the comment that would be useful to have the school board be on board with it as well. Maybe a letter from this board to the various school district boards. Again, just outlining, here's where we're going. And it's not a today thing, but this is, something that's in the works. I can definitely say from the schools that I've spoken to, it's probably one of the number one issues the students talk about and lament, that they do this recycling, but then they have to take it themselves. But they're very proud of that, I think. But if, again, to make sure there's that alignment and there is that political will within the school districts. And again, there may be school districts that are on different parts of that continuum, but to get that conversation happening sooner rather than later as well. So I don't know if staff have a thought about that. Or the chair.
Yeah, thanks. Like Sarah said, we're so I support a letter like that. I think it's a good idea. Again, I'd just like to do it at the right time. So we are, and Vivian can speak to this too about the. So we're 1 year into the organics program. Organics diversion, I think, would be an important part of that program. So we want to make sure that we're, if we're talking about it and introducing that idea, that we're ready for it, and that is the next logical step for organics. So, I'd suggest maybe we bring forward a staff report in the next couple of months that talks about organics, where we're at, how things are working, what the next step is in terms of expansion. And if that report supports expanding into the schools, then we begin that process with a letter asking for their support, that sort of thing. So that's an option.
Okay. Yeah, appreciate that. And I might be a bit eager because, I think 9 or 10 years ago when I first sat at this board, there was these pilot projects that had been going on for quite some time at that point. So I do have this sort of feeling of like, just getting it into that work plan or getting it really articulated, especially those conversations don't necessarily require action necessarily right away, but at least making sure there is that alignment, or where there may be some challenges, so that we're not assuming that, again, every school district is going to be as enthusiastic as some of us, or maybe all of us, are around this table. So appreciate that.
Okay, thank you. Still on receipt. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Repair Cafe support. Report gave. Thank you. Discussion?
We also have a presentation.
We have another presentation. You like?
So yeah, similar to the last report, this report takes a deep dive on repair cafes, and Sarah's here to kind of walk us through the outcome. And yeah, thanks.
Thanks through the representing CAO to the chair. Appreciate your patience on this. These are a couple of the sort of lighter options that we've got. We've got some more technical policy head turning things that are coming up in subsequent meetings. So appreciate your interest and investment in these lighter subject matters. So this repair cafe support has been a topic that's come up and certainly been growing regularly in across the service area, which has been great. Repair cafes, for those not familiar, are typically sort of volunteer run, organized by associations or groups, or sometimes the city of Campbell River, and people bring in their materials to get repaired. It's all free, and yeah, promotes a lot that we'll speak to here. So those events we feel support, circular economy approaches and working towards a goal of zero waste. And definitely the first 7 R's of refuse, rethink, redesign, reduce, reuse, repair, and recycle, right in there. They did come up during our consultation as well. And both in step 1 and step 2, people felt they don't really necessarily have the skills to repair their own items. It's a bit of a lost art. I think a lot of us have gotten used to this sort of take make, use, consume, throw it away society that the producers would like us to invest in so that they can continue to make more profits. You know, warranties and the longevity of a product is no longer sort of how we value or choose what we purchase. And that's definitely causing us implications in terms of waste generation quantities. So, you know, kind of inciting this has larger social impacts, but also really does support fundamentally our overall goal of diversion. It is still fairly grassroots at this time, but we are, as I mentioned, trying to combat that planned obsolescence. You know, appliances, they used to last decades. Now, you know, you're lucky if you can get them to last 5 years. So as I mentioned, free to attend, we hold them in publicly accessible areas. The volunteers usually bring their own supplies. We try and provide consumables, so things they might use like glues and uh, yeah, that's all I can think of right now. It's really about encouraging that shift in behavior, a shift in perspective. You know, if that fan breaks, don't just throw it away, don't just recycle it even. Let's think maybe it's a simple repair, maybe it can stay in place. I think one of the other challenges for people often when they do pursue repair is that it's cost prohibitive, right? If the repair costs more than buying a new item, it's very difficult for people to make that decision to repair it rather than just buy another one and recycle that one. And that's problematic in our society. Because of course there's more energy that goes into making a new product than there is in that repair. So the greenhouse gas implications of that new product being created and the materials that are going into it, that's a very difficult thing for us to measure. Something we're trying to get a little bit of a number on through our greenhouse gas assessment that we'll bring forward and incorporate into this memo when that's available. But again, it's a difficult thing to kind of put a number on. And I think this last bullet speaks to that, the valuing the natural resources. So we really do want to make this an inclusive thing. We want to make it so that, you know, anyone can have the access to that repair. We also really want to develop the skills within our local communities. A lot of the time, these volunteers are of the older generation, and we really need to see the youth and you know the middle-aged folks engaging in these activities so that isn't lost, that value, and that taking care of things isn't lost. We're working on that and connecting with high schools as well as skilled trades folks and trying to bring them into the picture as well. And it really does create a social event. It's very low key and it can just be an opportunity for people to connect as well. We held our first one in 2019. And that was in Courtney, and these are all done in conjunction with partners. It's certainly not us on our own. Through COVID, it was difficult, but we did do some online ones where folks were led through a repair in their home by a volunteer. The restart has been really successful, and consistency is definitely a factor. So, the more that people can anticipate events going to be held, whether it's annually or biannually, then the more they can think to save up. Oh, I know I can come to that thing in October and get this fixed there. So we've had quite a few events planned for this year. We've had 2 in April. One was in Tassis in conjunction with a larger event, included a beach cleanup and a spiffying up of the free store there. And that Tassis event, had 30 items brought in, and over half of those were able to be repaired right there. And some of them got taken away to get repaired later. And then we had a very successful event in Cumberland with 164 items that were brought in for repair, and over 129 were repaired that day. So that's wonderful, and definitely shows an increase in people coming. So that's a snapshot of our repairs for the last couple of years there at different events. The City of Campbell River holds events that we participate in, and we've hosted events on Quadra as well. Denman Island, and looking to expand where groups come and approach us. So recently we had the museum looking to potentially hold an event. I think they're still thinking about it, but it's in conjunction with a traveling display that they have that sort of collaborates with that. So it is within the work plan right now to provide support and assistance. And we have to kind of limit that. You know, we've got a bandwidth for our educator and they have a lot of things that they participate in. So for 2024, we've sort of outlined 6 events that are going to be held. And so this gives an opportunity for potentially expansion or furthering support these initiatives. When we're there, we're really looking to provide that consistency. If maybe this is a new organization, they've never held an event before, they're looking for some guidance. There's a lot of sort of standardized documents and process, just sort of checking people in, finding out what their item is, you know, directing them to the right person, having the signs up that tell people who's repairing textiles, who's repairing electronics. So we provide that sort of standardized support to each of these events. And as well, while we're there, we're educating about our other aspects of our program. Apologies, it's a bit small on these screens, but just demonstrating that we have looked at what other events are happening in other communities and sort of the structure and the frequency that they're looking at. So what we see again is sort of some of them are looking at monthly events, and that provides that consistency and frequency. Most of them are combining with a nonprofit or a host community group, and then some of them are providing some funding, depending on the particular group. So we have a few strategies here. The first is to maintain the current support. So as I mentioned, it's kind of, you know, sort of 6 to 8 events a year, and providing assistance. So sorry, 5 to 6 events is what was estimated here. We've got improved website updates that have occurred, and you know, we could potentially update the Recollect app with some repair options within that budget. We definitely are still considering continuing to advocate for right to repair, but those are, you know, high level federal type regulations. This is a low diversion, low cost option. Textiles is maybe one area where these materials could be potentially diverted from waste rather than recycling, but certainly provides those extra values and benefits to the community as discussed. For strategy 3B, we're looking at potentially offering grants to help support and offset some of the costs, and as well to reward the volunteers. So typically, you know, buying them some lunch, maybe a little bit of a thank you, and also to offer that intergenerational learning, bringing in younger folks and allowing for some of the volunteers to potentially have their travel costs offset. If we have not enough volunteers in some of our remote or island communities, some of our urban volunteers have made the effort of traveling out there, and it would be good to be able to offset those costs as well. So we're looking with this for you know, $500 to $2,500 in grants potentially per event, and maxing out at a commitment level of about $10,000, just so that the board understands what that financial upset would be. The third option is for Repair Cafe toolkits. So as I mentioned, a lot of the volunteers are bringing their own supplies, but it certainly does help to anticipate common items that, you know, whether it's bike tubes, whether it's different electronic parts. I'm trying to speak like I've fixed something electronic before, but I really haven't. So yeah, we've discussed with the volunteers and Lindsay, who's participated in a number of these events, you know, what would work, and what she's put forward is about $1,000 per kit. She feels 2 kits would be suitable. And then, you know, replacement costs of about $500 a year in the consumables, which would be a part of those kits. So just a summary of those 3 options. Again, you know, emphasis, we recognize the diversion potential is low, but, you know, it is difficult to measure some of those other impacts. And we do feel that it crosses over to a number of other initiatives that local governments and both of our regional districts support. So we look forward to bringing these forward to you in that long list of options, and learning what the board considers to be appropriate. And again, you know, this is not a you have to pick one situation. You can pick one, multiple, none. That's the idea behind this long list as we move forward. Thanks.
Okay. Director Wells. Director Greaves first. I apologize, sir.
The other one.
You were waiting.
Well, thank you, Sarah, for this. You're touching a nerve in my world because coming from a background of a failed rock star, I can tell you that my most valuable amplifiers were built in the 50s and 60s. And out of all my friends that there were involved in fixing, TVs and CD players and amplifiers in the day, there's only one left that still does it. The rest have folded up their shop and their shingle, and because we live in an era of thrash it and smash it and throw it away and buy a new one, which doesn't necessarily be any better. But when you do take things apart yourself, you sometimes find it's just a cold solder connection or an internal fuse that's blown. I mean, all that stuff used to be made user friendly, so you could fix it. So I think the next speaker probably going to speak to this when you talk about proprietary technology. A friend of mine from Alberta was saying that in Cochrane, Alberta, that all the Mennonites were lined up around the block at the John Deere dealership because they can't fix their own farm machinery anymore. So we're fighting a huge vested interest in this stuff. And I think some of the computer companies are similar. So, it's sad, but I would encourage, you can't even, take an electronics course in anymore that deals with just regular components, because all you need to do is just fix those capacitors and the thing's almost like brand new because they were built to last. So, I'm all for it, but really, like I say, when you take a look at the way the world's going, they're absolutely going at 180 degrees from where this is at. So I don't know if we can't address that at this order of government, say, but it is a problem, and it's only going to get worse as time goes by, and people lose the ability to even fix simple things. So, thanks.
Director Wells.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I guess two things. First of all, the right to repair, which is something that I think, especially overseas in Europe, is something that the governments there are working very hard for, and I think certainly something that would be worthwhile advocating for on this side of the pond, as it were. And a world that I spent a lot of my career in, but really getting to these events. I've been to a few of them here in the Comox Valley, and I would say first and foremost, they are really well attended. And in fact, my son, who had a steering wheel for his video game that wasn't working, I believe we had to wait about 3 hours to get the repair. So to me, there's a significant positive uptake, and if there's ways for us to support it, it's something that I certainly would recommend to the board if they've never been to one of these events or know what impact it can have to people. But over the few hours that we sat there in the waiting room, people bringing in toasters and air fryers and all sorts of things to what Director Greaves was saying that really just needed a simple fix to get out the door. And providing things like solder and duct tape and whatever things red green might use to get things rocking and rolling again. But yeah, absolutely, I think that these are amazing events that really speak to that circular economy and keeping things out of the landfills. So I'd be recommending that we certainly do as much as we can to support these events, to make them more frequent, more convenient, and to support those who are volunteering of their time to make this world a better place.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions? Okay, perfect. So still on receipt. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Regional Solid Waste Advisory Committee. Report dated, this is where you jump in, Mr. Grant.
I like hearing you read.
Report dated May 9th, 2024. There we go. Second, Director Chapman. Discussion. All in favor,
Sorry,
We have another presentation.
we don't have a presentation this time, but we have a synopsis, I think, by Sarah, just to quickly summarize the points made in the report.
Thank you. Yes, this presentation or report is really just about providing capacity to ensure good representation on the RSWAC, the Regional Solid Waste Advisory Committee. So we have members of the public there. We have members of the technical committee, which are primarily our local government solid waste staff, as well as regional district staff from Strathcona and Comox Valley. And then we have our two elected officials, which had been appointed as the co-chairs of the CSWM board to participate in that committee. And so we wanted to expand the ability for those elected officials to appoint alternates to allow just a supporting role there, so we can ensure a good representation at each of these. So we've seen really wonderful discussions happening, 3 to 4 hour long meetings. We've had 10 so far. So the community members have really committed a significant amount of effort into understanding and learning about these issues to provide their context and conversation to this process. So the recommendation is a little small to read from here, but it is to ensure sound representation from the Comox Strathcona Waste Management Service Area, the Strathcona Regional District and Comox Valley Regional District. Vice chairs be named as alternates to the respective regional district co-chairs for the purposes of co-chairing the RSWAC meetings, and further that the terms of reference for the RSWAC be revised to reflect the allowance for an alternate and the structure of alternating meeting chairs. So we just revised some of the text within that.
Do we have a motion, please? So moved. Second, sorry. Did we vote on receipt? Yeah, we're still on receipt.
You're trying to get it done so quick.
No, not at all. I enjoy spending time with you. And we have a hand up online. He's still on receipt. Do you have discussion, Director Cole Hamilton?
No, I was just going to move the recommendation, but when we get to
Okay, thank you. So on receipt, all in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Now the motion, please. There we go. Second, Director. Okay, Director Davis. Discussion. All in favor? Director Cole Hamilton.
That's okay. I just thank you, Chair, though. I just wanted to say that how valuable I have found it to be able to attend the RSWAC meetings. And because the other members of the board, besides yourself and I, Chair Baker, haven't had the opportunity, I just wanted to thank Sarah Willie on everyone's behalf. She manages to bring the group together and make the many hours of discussion of solid waste both enjoyable and informative, and it's been a real pleasure watching her take the group through these meetings, and just appreciate this change. It'll make sure that we've always got strong representation.
Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. 2024 UBCM resolution, sustainable funding for solid waste management compliance. Is there any presentation on that? There is?
Not a PowerPoint, but yes. Yeah, I'd like to introduce Vivian Shaw. Vivian is just going to take us through the report, and then we're available for questions.
I'm sorry.
Through the GM of Engineering Services to the CSWM Chair and Board. Thank you so much for having us here today. There is no presentation, so I apologize. This report here is a follow-up to a resolution from the board to submit UBCM resolution in advance to the June 18th deadline. This proposed resolution that's before you aims to address the necessity for increased funding options to meet the stricter environmental regulations that are continually being imposed by provincial and federal governments, specifically here in the solid waste management realm. Local governments like CSWM continue to face financial strains due to limited resource revenues, which are to be able to fund these costly infrastructure upgrades to comply with regulations. And we have done so over the last few years. We've implemented significant improvements to our facilities, including the implementation of landfill gas collections and the closure of our Bold Pigeon Lake landfill here in Cumberland, as well as the Campbell River landfill. Funding still continue to remain as a challenge, and funding and federal and funding opportunities are quite competitive, which again leaves local government with that burden of that escalating financial cost to be able to manage these upgrades. In the coming years, financial challenges include impending regulatory updates to the landfill gas regulations, monitoring requirements, landfill closures in our remote landfills. And so to that end, CSWM is proposing the resolution that's before you and within the report to appeal to the government to address funding issues, again, seeking that support from higher levels of government and highlighting the matter in regional discussions. The request to meet with the Minister George Heyman, was sent, and our CAO received confirmation of that meeting request. While it was it wasn't necessarily declined. It was redirected to the deputy minister, who will have better understanding of this file. And we're just awaiting a response for that meeting date with the deputy minister. This specific topic was raised in a more general manner at the recent regional district chair and CAO forum in Victoria back in March. And while this is a topic that is obviously very near and dear to our hearts, but it's also transcends beyond just waste management. So it was discussed in much broader terms at that forum. And yeah, so to that end, we've got the resolution I also can't read. It's really small, but it's within your report. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. So recommended resolution, or actually we'll do the receipt first. On receipt, all in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Excellent. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. And there's a whole lot. We go to asbestos disposal update. The report from May 9th, 2024 regarding disposal options for asbestos and asbestos containing material in the Comox Strathcona waste management. I'm at the end.
I know, I waited.
Second, Director Chapman. Discussion.
There's gotta be a report.
There's got to be is there any presentations?
Yes, again, I'd like
Yes.
to introduce Vivian Shaw, our Senior Manager of Comox Strathcona Waste Management Services, just to provide a summary of this report and then be available for questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. Through Mark to the chair and the board. This report here is just to provide a quick update on the asbestos situation. As you are maybe aware, in response to a community need and heightened awareness around asbestos, the CSW service actually started receiving asbestos containing material waste at the Campbell River landfill back in 2017. But following the closure of the landfill, or the Campbell River landfill in 2022, Northwind, a private landfill in Campbell River, stepped in to take in the regional asbestos waste. And they're really honed in on specializing in taking in just commercial quantities. So they're the primary site for asbestos disposal for commercial contractors, while CSWM is more at the Campbell River transfer station, takes in more of the smaller quantities where we consolidate in a bin and then transfer over to Northwind for final disposal. In the middle of March, April 14th, I think it was, Northwind had to suspend their asbestos disposal part of their operation due to administrative issue with the ministry, which prompted staff to explore different alternative disposal options for ACM, asbestos containing material waste. While asbestos accounts for a very, very small portion of the waste, it demands immediate attention to address environmental and also health safety concerns. So staff worked quickly to establish disposal agreements with neighboring regional districts. We engaged in discussions with the RDN, the Capital Regional District, as well as the Regional District of Mount Waddington. Due to the timing of the CSWM board meetings, there was no scheduled meeting while this was taking place. And this situation required prompt action. So we just wanted to express our sincere thanks to both the co-chairs in working with staff to get the letter to the RDN board to get this issue on their agenda. Through this collaboration with the Regional District of Nanaimo, we were able to secure a 2-year out-of-region waste exemption granted by the RDN board on April 26, which enables the disposal of asbestos material originating from CSWM residents and businesses at the RDN facilities, specifically at their Church Road transfer station in Parksville, or directly to the landfill on Cedar Road. We also want to take this opportunity to thank the RDN staff and board in working with us on this issue. Again, this really demonstrates the effectiveness of cross-jurisdictional relationships and partnerships, and recognizing that sometimes waste does not respect jurisdictional boundaries. So with this agreement in place, residents and businesses are able to dispose of their waste directly at the RDN without the need for CSWM to subsidize those costs and ensuring that the service is managing waste on generally more user cost recovery basis as outlined in the report. I want to stress that this is really intended to be just a temporary option, and Northwind is committed to reinstating their asbestos disposal operation, and they're intended to be the long-term disposal solution for our CSWM service area. Based on the latest update from Northwind last week, it appears that the urgency for this reinstatement for disposal has been received by the ministry, from Northwind, from CSWM staff, as well as WorkSafe and various asbestos abatement companies here within the region. So to that end, staff is recommending a unified messaging to the ministry, from staff, from the board, and to advocate and expedite Northwind's application their hazardous waste registration site number application to be reviewed and hopefully reinstate that in-region waste disposal option. And the resolution is again before you on the board.
Okay, so still on receipt, all in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried, and the recommended resolution. Before I read it, I appreciate that. Discussion? All in favor?
Chair
Director-
Baker, Chair Baker.
So, we have somebody online. Sorry, Director Senate.
Yeah, I have to declare a conflict on this one for business reasons. I just want that recorded, so I'm gonna exit and then come back.
Okay, it won't be long.
I know. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you gone yet?
Well, I'm trying to.
Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. You can come back now, Susan. Now, oh, well, there we go. Campbell River landfill closure project update. Do we have a presentation?
Yes. Yeah, I'd like to introduce Adam Idris. Adam is our solid waste analyst and has been working to manage this project over the past couple of years. So he's here to provide kind of the closeout report and a summary of the staff report, and also has a presentation to walk us through. So, thanks, Adam.
Oh.
Right, thanks, Mark. Through the chair, through the CIO. I'd like to present to you the Kamba River closure project. It's a piece of good news. I think probably some of you remember, maybe have some stories about parking your pickup trucks and dumping your garbage over the cliff back in the day in that landfill. So it's finally closed, and we have some report on that. I got that one. Okay, perfect. So the landfill at the report states is an old one from the since the 1970s. It was operated by the city, and then the CSWM, or the Comox Strathcona at the time, took over the operation. It grew and grew into this big hill. It's a very tight site. We leased the land from the province, so we are kind of constrained by the concrete plant and then the new compost facility to the north and the road on both sides of the Argonaut Road. So we couldn't really expand it beyond the footprint that it occupies currently. So plans were made to close it in phased approach in the early 2010s. In 2014, a little bit of it was closed, but then there were subsequent closure plans for it that never materialized because it's just too tight to operate and then close at the same time. So, but we got a warning letter in 2019, I think, that kind of pushed us to expedite the filling of that landfill, and then finally closed in 2021, 2022, and finally to 2023. So that's the old closure that I'm talking about at the bottom towards Argonaut Road. And then we tied the new liner into it. So the layers, so just for technical reasons, the coverage consists of two types of coverage, the soil coverage as well as the liner to protect rainwater from infiltrating into the ground through the garbage, but also to collect gas that comes that gets generated underneath the cover, and then topsoil to just protect it from erosion and grass it later. Here's our landfill gas wells that we're installing. We have 31 of them, and then a network of pipes to collect that landfill gas and then get it to the flare station for destruction. And then here's our flare station, a blower skid to the left that introduces negative pressure to the well field, and then that gets the gas flowing into the flare station, and then it burns, as you can see, through that window. These are the stats that we have for greenhouse gas emissions. We basically produce 77.5 tons of CO2 per day, and relative to our corporate emissions, this is quite significant, as you can see. So the flare is operational as of 2 weeks ago. Budget, the approved budget for this project was around $11 million. We spent about, or projected to spend, around $9.5 million out of it. We're already about $40,000 to $60,000 is left now in the budget, so to get it to 9.5 million, and the remaining of that budget will be going back to the capital reserves for future closures of other landfills, about $1.5 million. So as any construction project has challenges, we got some of them here. Big one was the tightness of the landfill. we rented a space, a different site. If you can see in the very background, in the very far back, we rented a space from a neighbor to stockpile our soils from where the compost facility went, and then use that also as a staging area for construction. Another issue typical for landfill closures is what we call whaling, which is as you put the liner and you tighten the top of the landfill, the gas continues to produce, and then it creates bubbles that makes the slope unstable. So then we force it to cut the liner and let it vent, basically, during construction. Here's the flare as it arrives, and we suffered major delays with this one. It just was hard to get the contractor to get things done on a timely manner. COVID was one of the reasons or excuses. Distance there from Ontario, so it was delayed for about 1.5 years. Another issue was working with Technical Safety BC. They were short-staffed, so we had to get different third parties to review the system and so on. So working with them closely would be useful next time. Operations of the landfill gas flare station as well as the well field would be through our wastewater treatment team. They run the landfill gas system here in Cumberland as well. So they have experienced staff, they have redundancy, so they are the best and well equipped to operate it. All right, that's the presentation. If you have any questions, feel free. That's a photo from 2000 of that landfill.
Go ahead, Director Harper.
Yes, thanks. And once again, we're going to make the news for coming under budget on our projects. It's like every day local government outperforms. No, that will never make the news, but it's pretty awesome. So thank you for that work. When you talked about the $2 million in capital reserves, that basically we're going to save from budget. I'm just wondering if the board would have the appetite to assign that $2 million to try to address processing the landfill gas that's coming out. We keep tripping over ourselves, and obviously we had the conversation with Fortis about 8 months ago, but nothing is happening. Nothing ever happens. So I'm wondering if the board would have the appetite, or if staff could bring back a report to see if we see that our own project potentially with that 2 million, and try to see if we can organize our own project with or without Fortis. I'm getting really tired of their inaction. And I think that when you talk about the greenhouse gas emission that is being flared both at Campbell River and Cumberland, I mean, we are pulling our hair across all of our corporate services to try to make incremental, tiny savings when the giant in the room is really this one. So I think I'm wondering if that 2 million that we're saving could be allocated to that.
Director Mowini.
Just respond.
You can respond, certainly.
And I see Lucy's up also. So a few things. Speaking specifically to Campbell River and the landfill gas there, I could invite Sarah to speak to study work that is ongoing. And then also, sorry, I have a second thought there. Yeah, maybe we'll just start with that. So we do have study work ongoing for Campbell River landfill in terms of landfill gas. So maybe I'll just let Sarah summarize that just as a reminder for the board.
There you are.
Nope.
No, one more.
Thank you through the CEO to the chair. So for the Campbell River landfill, we did engage through some funding from FCM, green building funding, to look at the feasibility of establishing beneficial use for the gas coming out. So we've engaged with Waga Energy, which is a French company that has a number of systems operating there, as well as more recently a system in Quebec and a system under construction at the Victoria landfill, Heartland landfill here on the island. So they've been undertaking some analysis. The most recent update I received from them is that it is a challenging economic proposition with the current gas quantities. As Adam mentioned, the flare has been operational for a short time. So what we are needing to feed them into their analysis is our actual gas quantities in terms of flow as well as quality. So once they have that, they'll be able to finalize their feasibility study and we'll bring that back to the board. The barrier that we're trying to overcome with this particular facility, there's two. One is that it's a closed landfill, so it has a constantly declining gas quantity. And the second is that there is no current landfill gas or natural gas pipeline in the vicinity. So we were trying to consider options for either compressing or liquefying the gas to make it sort of a bit of an adaptable solution that could be applied in other remote areas. And those were kind of the unique aspects of this. So we'll bring that back to the board. That is underway and should be, with a few months of data. Once there tends to be an accumulation of gas when it hasn't been on for this period of time. So the numbers always look stronger than they do. And we've seen that with the closure that we had at Pigeon Lake landfill. So once we reach a bit of a steady state, we'll have better data to feed into their analysis and bring that back to the board.
Director Davis.
Yeah, thanks, Chair.
Sorry.
Further to that, I'm just wondering if there could be a different approach, burning off the gas, but actually producing electricity with it and putting it into the grid. I just thought maybe this would be a more cost-effective solution. Obviously, you're still burning the gas, but at least you're getting some material benefit without putting in major infrastructure, because it doesn't sound like it's going to fly putting in pipelines for that amount of gas to send it to wherever, get it into the rest of the, the gas grid, whatever you call it. So I just wondering if you had a comment on that.
Year 22. Here we go.
Yeah, Hydro recently had a call for power, which is not always available. So, just given the timing, we were waiting for the results from this, but there are some solutions. Converting gas into electricity is definitely less efficient than converting gas into gas. So that you do lose some benefits there. There's also significant heat generation usually associated with that it can be beneficial to capture. So it's definitely if this path sort of comes to closure, there's other paths that we can consider for that gas quantity. Another one that's a little bit more unproven at this time, but that has been making the rounds is, using that electricity on site rather than trying to connect it to the grid in the production of Bitcoin. So that's something that we're trying not to completely throw out as absurd because I don't think it provides as much value to the community as other uses for electricity, but it does overcome some of those challenges of bringing the grid to the site, depending on the capacity of the existing electrical lines nearby. So there are other options for sure that we can pursue should this particular feasibility study not prove that it can move forward. So thank you for that.
Director Wells and then Director Mulvaney.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just kind of want to maybe support the comments that Director Arbor made. I think our first presentation from Fortis was 9 or 10 years ago. This is viable, we're working on it, and here we are, and it doesn't feel like we've really moved at all. And I think one of the sort of mathematical things that comes into this is just the diminishing returns, because as we just talked about trying to get more organics out of the landfill, the more organics we get out, the less gas we're going to have over time. So it's really like right now we have the most amount of gas probably being produced than we ever will, like every day or, every month, theoretically and hopefully we're putting less of those organics in there, which is going to result in less gases coming off. And so I think for me, that's where the urgency was 9 or 10 years ago. And it just feels like that urgency is just going to get more and more exacerbated, especially once we start doing ICI and schools and that kind of stuff. So, really just trying to say, like, we've got this stuff. Is there not something that we can do to kind of try to get to that circular economy kind of concept sooner rather than later?
Yeah, thank you. Definitely hear the frustration with not being able to move ahead with the beneficial reuse of gas. We'll remind the board that that topic for the Comox Valley Waste Management Center is in camera. So we should be cautious about what we talk about here. And I would propose that, that we are struggling and owe you a report. So I would suggest that we bring a report to the next meeting that further discusses those opportunities for beneficial reuse at the Comox Valley site. Sorry, one more thing, Chair, if I could add it. It was a response to Director Arbor's initial suggestion that we reallocate funds that are remaining or under budget from this closure project. And I was told that those funds are debt funds, so they wouldn't necessarily be returned to reserves like Adam indicated. That we were using debt to pay for the closure, so it's a reduced amount of a debt that we need to incur, as a regional district. And also that debt was specifically approved through the loan authorization bylaw for 3 projects. So the closure of Campbell River, the closure of the Comox Valley landfill, the Pigeon Lake landfill, and then the expansion and leachate treatment plant. Thanks.
Okay. Director Mulwiney.
Thank you, Chair. And my question is really related to really like the Comox Valley landfill as well, or the Cumberland landfill as well as Campbell River, because the presentation mentioned that there were 77 tons of greenhouse gases, and I wasn't sure if that was a year. It kind of went past per day. Thank you, Director McCollum. And so looking at seeing like that whaling that's happening when you're covering the landfill really, to me, means that the greenhouse gases are being created now in Cumberland while it's uncovered. And I'm wondering, I guess, 2 things. Is there an estimate on the amount of greenhouse gases that that are being created currently? And is there any other opportunities for capture other than waiting for closure?
So I'm going to turn this over to Sarah. She's best to speak to the Comox Valley landfill, the gas that's being generated as we continue to fill. So, but there are progressive closures that happen, and the gas system is progressively installed as we build the landfill. So Sarah can speak to that and how effective it is and efficient it is and what that process kind of looks like.
Yeah, that's one of the significant changes that we've made since first installing our landfill gas system. So in 2016, our first landfill gas wells that we installed in the Pigeon Lake landfill were vertical wells. So we drilled them into the existing waste and then turned them on. What we are doing now is every 5 meters of waste, we're placing horizontal wells. So we lay them within the waste and then we put another 5 meters of waste, more wells. And so once there's a substantial amount of waste on top of those horizontal wells, we can turn them on. So we don't have to wait until there's 30 years of garbage in order to turn the wells on. We just have to wait until there's enough so that they won't draw air into the system, which can cause increased temperatures and fire potential. So that's one way that we've really shifted. So that particular picture that you see, yes, gas is always being created. And the challenge that was occurring during construction that Adam mentioned is that as we put the liner on without gas collection, the tighter the liner got, the less places there was for the gas to go. And so that was how that whaling occurred. So Installing walls as we go is one way. The other is cell one is anticipated to reach its capacity, and it's again, it's sort of a partial fill. Cell two will come up and meet it, and then that plateau will continue on. So that lower elevation that is the final grade for cell one will afford us 3 external slopes that are at final elevation. So those 3 external slopes we can do closure on. So August, September, this fall is when we anticipate getting to the top. So, closure could occur as soon as next year. The liners really need to be installed during dry weather because they're fused, so they can't be done in the rain. So we could install that final cover, and what that does is allows us to pull harder, like to apply more vacuum to the system to again get more gas. And then, we continue to explore options as part of our greenhouse gas assessment. We've received draft 1 of the initial greenhouse gas inventory for our service. The estimated number for our 2022 baseline, sorry, I don't have it in front of me, but 40 to 46,000 tons per year is the number that's on top of mind. And the majority of that is, of course, from landfills. So we also evaluated our transportation emissions of hauling waste and recycling, as well as our on-site equipment, and the compactor and that sort of thing. So there's definitely still room for improvement. That 2022 number incorporates the emissions from Campbell River landfill, which will be significantly reduced with the implementation of the flare that's now come on board. So I think we're expecting a 15 to 20,000 ton per year reduction in our emissions just based on that alone. And then for future parts of that study are best practices and strategies for reducing those emissions. So that's what we're working with them on now to address some of those. And we continue to look to our partners across the province and the innovations that they're implementing to reduce their gas emissions. There's some technology that's being tried at the Vancouver landfill, and now Victoria has just procured some automated wells. So they are self-tuning. Rather than having a staff member go out and take a measurement and make an adjustment, the well can do it itself. So there is significant investment, but that's one example of ways that we can further improve as we move forward.
Thank you, Director Harper.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate the extra conversation. I'm still super frustrated with how slowly we are advancing on this topic. And I'm just wondering if motions today would be useful to try to really put the emphasis on action rather than forever studies. I've been on this board 6 years now, and it feels like we're having the exact same discussions we were 6 years ago. So, and so for me, there's 2 things that this board can do. One is provide resources. That's why, I understand Mark when Mr. Rutten, when he talked about the $2 million being debt, but okay, at the next update, can you bring us back a financial plan that shows how we could fund processing of LNG or landfill gas at both Campbell River and Comox Valley? And then let the board wrestle with whether we're willing to fund it or what external partners we might need, because we're just not progressing. We're already halfway through this term, and there's 2 more years. And I think it would be pretty amazing for this board in the next 2 years to actually advance a project and get it funded. But I'm not seeing that with the pace we're going at. So, yeah. I'll try to remain patient.
Thank you. Still on receipt. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. The CSWM resolution status report. There we go. Discussion. Do we have a speaker?
No, we don't have a speaker or a presentation. The report's here for your information. You can see that a few of the items are completed. They'll come off for the next version. And several of these items are related to the solid waste management plan, so they'll live on here for quite a while until the plan is completed. And we're happy to answer any questions you might have on any of the other items.
Thank you. Okay, still on receipt. All in favor? Oh, I have a question. Director Wells.
Thank you, Chair. And yeah, it kind of goes to one of the oldest resolutions in there about opening up another recycling depot in the south end of Camp River. And I might be biased, but I'd also like one or two in the Comox Valley as well, when we're talking about trying to make recycling more convenient and to increase that uptake. And you know, it sounds like, you know, it's been on here for quite some time. There's been denials. Sounds like it's still denied. And just wondering if there is either advocacy work the board can do, and I'm looking to the co-chairs maybe, but you know, how do we move this forward, or is this a dead horse and we should just, you know, accept defeat?
Yeah, I will turn it over to Vivian or Sarah to speak to. Of course, recycling is a major topic within the solid waste management planning work that we're doing. We also are trying to work within Recycle BC's limits on how many depots they will allow. So they have rules on accessibility and driving times and whatnot. So they just won't approve a depot if your community already meets those requirements. But I think Sarah or Vivian could add more information about what's coming up in terms of solid waste management planning, and if the board's interested, those sort of rules or that Recycle BC has in place around how many depots are allowed within a certain area.
Thank you for the question. It's, I guess, twofold. To answer your question around the Recycle BC depot and the replacement of I think you're alluding to the Comox depot that was closed back in 2022. Mark is correct that there is under the accessibility criteria as defined by Recycle BC, they are meeting that accessibility standards and in terms of drive distance and distance. And so we do want to again stress that the EPRs are really the responsibility for the producers to manage the entire end of life cycle of their materials. And would behoove us to put taxpayer dollars to basically for taxpayers to pay twice for the management of their material. So we are really looking to continue to push Recycle BC to manage their products properly as intended to, as outlined in the recycling regulation. Recycle BC is currently undergoing a consultation for their cost study for depots and also for curbside as well, which hopefully will help incentivize the private sector to be able to take this on again. Like this is an ongoing issue. It's not just our community. Parksville, just down the road from us, have been facing this issue since I think the closure of their Parksville and Qualicum depot back in 2016, and it's been a continuing pressing issue. I think Squamish recently closed theirs, and it's happening all across the province. With Recycle BC's contract being more that, there is, again, a big push for us as staff to continue to advocacy work. And just speaking further to Sarah's work under the solid waste management plan, we are looking at that in a much broader context as to how we can ensure that accessibility and equity across our service region, looking at it from the different material types as it aligns with the toxicity, the type of frequency that needs to be removed off-site. So there's an entire evaluation of that across our region that's happening right now. But I do want to again stress that we are working through with Recycle BC for the Oyster River Depot for that to be stated as as a satellite depot, so at least the transportation component will be covered. And then we can also expect the revenue from that as well. There is appetite from Recycle BC, so we're at least starting that conversation to be built into the work plan for 2025.
All right, thanks for that.
Director Mulwiney.
Thank you, Chair. And similar to Director Wells, I have a question about the second to last item on the status report, resolution status report. And specifically, this is to do with the Quadra Island Recycle Depot. That's I'm really happy that the lease agreement has been signed. And this status indicates that the operations contract and building request for proposals will be reissued. I'm curious if there's a timeline for that, and there's always questions from the community about when and where and why it hasn't happened as we had been told it would. So just looking for a timeline.
Yeah, over to Vivian for this one, please.
We're looking to reissue the construction of the facility in the coming weeks. We're just refinalizing the scope as we're revisiting the assumptions that were originally made and aligning that with the directive from the board for the Recycle BC component, but also the exploration of the free store directive from the March board meeting. So we're just reassessing and confirming those space requirements. For the operational agreement that was issued out last year. Unfortunately, the responses was quadruple what we had originally budgeted for. So we are looking at alternatives to work within the confines of our budget and the expectations of the board as well. So that will be it should be going out fairly shortly. So we're anticipating that, again, it's pending the outcome of that operational agreement. We essentially need somebody to be able to operate the facility, but the construction of it will be happening ideally this summer. Okay.
Anyone else? No, still on receipt. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried.
Second.
Sorry, I thought you nodded off there for a minute, Dr. Wakey. Discussion? Sorry? You beat them.
We have a presentation.
We have a presentation? Please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thanks for accepting this late item. I think Sarah's got just a brief introduction to this item, and then we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. And yes, apologies for the tardiness. It was an omission on my part that we needed to bring this forward to the board for consideration. So working with the Strathcona Regional District First Nations Liaison, ASLI, we've worked to establish a community-to-community meeting with the West Coast First Nations and the Village of Zabalas. So this is precipitated from a series of meetings that we had virtually with the community members, both elected and staff, to really start the discussion around the landfill closure that will be implemented in the coming years of the Zabalas landfill. And so there's great collaboration there with the different governments, and it was put forward by them that this could be a potential opportunity for a good community discussion. And so we've put forward the application through the CVRD to receive funding to hold sort of an open house style event. For those not familiar, the landfill is actually a bit of a ways out of town. It's sort of about 30 minutes along a bit of a rough road from where the Village of Zabalas and the Village of Ahatis is. So the proposed location from the community members would be to consider establishing a transfer station and recycling depot within Ahatis lands. So that's one consideration. It's not the final direction at this time, but that's the idea, is to consider that option with the community, to invite them to dinner. And then in the morning to have a face-to-face sit-down meeting with the local governments and the First Nations to discuss the community's reaction and response, and what the needs of those facilities will be going forward. So it's that's the proposal that we put forward. It's approved in principle for $20,000 in funding to support that event. As you can imagine, there's a bit of travel and accommodation and food expenses to support there. So looking for the board's consideration of that recommendation. Thank you.
Anyone? Director Well, sorry, we already voted on receipt.
Recommendation.
Oh, there's a light on? Oh, there you go. Hi, Director Hicks, one moment, please. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Any idea on the timeline for this meeting?
Yeah, as you can imagine, scheduling is a bit challenging.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so we've reached out to them with some proposed dates, and we'll see. They had a bit of a whale of a situation recently that caused certainly a lot of resources to go towards that effort. Thank you for acknowledging my joke, Director Wells. So we've proposed some summer dates. There's a few community events also occurring. There's UCIT Days and also the Northern Games that occur in July. So those are kind of two back-to-back events. So being respectful of that, we'll see. But
yeah,
proposed August, it may fall in September. We're trying to get the good weather if we can.
You're gonna wait till a big fish come in before you're gonna come.
I mean, it wouldn't hurt. Yeah.
Thank you.
Director Mulwiney. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say that we at the SRD had a community meeting with the Cayucit Nation, and I felt like it was really valuable. And so I would recommend that we also move forward on this.
Hey, Director Grant, you ready?
I'd like to move the recommendation.
I can't hear you online.
Second. Move the recommendation.
Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. We already did that. Where were you? He was getting a muffin. Oh, did he get one for anybody else? No.
We move termination now?
I think we should go to termination.
I'm gonna move that.
So moved. There you go. Discussion? You want to take some time and talk about this? So how have everybody been?
We got a report?
Can I get a presentation on that, please? Okay, thank you, everybody.